Hi, everyone. We're here at the Metals Investor Forum doing backstage interviews. I am with Peter Bures, who is CEO of Silver Crown Royalties. Peter, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Um, there's been some amazing developments for you at Silver Crown. It's been quite the last year. I know you've been around for a while, but some fantastic developments. And you know, the royalty business is very particular, obviously very much related to mining, but different in some ways. And maybe we can just start off by explaining that a little bit to viewers. Tell us a little bit about why the royalty business is very particular, and explain to us how it works.
Sure. Yeah. In terms of a royalty business, it's essentially an upfront payment for future revenues from a mining operation. And this is, from a business perspective, a very lucrative proposition because the mine itself does not necessarily have to be profitable in order for the royalty to make money. So you're getting a percentage, 1, 2, 3, 5% off the top of the revenues coming back for an upfront payment. The other part is that payment can be made not only in cash, but also in equity. And if it's made in equity, it aligns the operator, the producer of those revenues, and the royalty company with the same goal, which is to successfully make that operation work. Because if it works, the royalty company gets paid, the royalty company gets revalued, and as a shareholder of that royalty company, the producer benefits. Ultimately, there's also a path to free cash flow for the royalty company, dividends, and again, participation in the success of that royalty company by the operator.
Excellent. So yeah, I mean, it's a quite a different business model, but clearly lower risk than mining per se, with a lot of the potential upside.
Correct. In terms of the royalty business model, usually a royalty is put on a project that is already established. There's no exploration risk because people already know what the minerals that are contained in that project are. That's where the royalty comes in. Maybe a streaming company as well. They help fund the project into production, maybe additional exploration, things of that nature. But there's no guesswork around how big is this project today because that's already in the market. Similar with production. If a project is operating, a royalty is put on that. We already know what the operating history of that asset is. The guesswork, that risk, is really limited in that regard. The other great thing about royalty companies is you don't need just one royalty. You can build a basket of royalties, further limiting risk across the board. A mining company, maybe it's a one asset operator, maybe they have two assets, maybe they're both in the same region. Well, I'm sorry, but that's a lot of risk right there. One project fails, well, that's 50% of your company. Maybe it's the whole thing. For a royalty company that has 100 different royalties, 2, 3, 10 projects can fail. I'm not going to say that the royalty company doesn't notice that. Of course it does, but it's nowhere near as disastrous as if you're a single asset operator and something bad happens.
Makes sense. And your approach is different from most royalty companies. And that really attracted me and got me to inquire and try to understand a little bit better when I came across Silver Crown. Maybe you can elaborate how you're different from your peers.
Yeah, sure. Because the royalty business model is so lucrative, a lot of players are attracted to it. The standard business model for royalty is a percentage of off the top revenues. And it doesn't matter what the metal is per se, in terms of a polymetallic mine producing gold, copper, silver, etc., 2% of all the revenues, that's generally what a royalty company would do. Now there's 25, 30 listed royalty companies out there that are essentially doing that type of business. What we decided to focus on is a lesser metal that is very important, don't get me wrong, but because it's such a small revenue component of the whole at a mine, generally speaking, 70, 80% of the time as a byproduct, and that's silver. So that silver is almost an afterthought for these producers, as well as for these royalty companies that go for that percentage of total revenue, not percentage of individual elements within that ore body. So that's what we decided to focus on because there's no one else doing it. It's great. But the other thing as well is every single polymetallic mine that produces gold or copper or lead and zinc will produce silver as well. Whether or not they want to, the silver does get recovered into the flowed product or it ends up in the doré bar. One way or the other, it's there. And because it's such a small component, generally the operator will not necessarily want to argue over the price in terms of, obviously, they want to maximize value for their shareholders, but it's not going to be a do or die as if they were selling the primary metal. Nor will the market look at them and say, oh, you've sold the best part of your ore body. Well, with the silver, they're selling an afterthought, essentially. So again, it's a way for them to crystallize value by utilizing either our capital or our equity as a silver royalty company.
So actually, that was going to be more specifically my next question, why you chose to acquire royalties on silver only. And so you've done a great job there of explaining that to us.
Well, if I may, I'll just
Of course,
add to that.
yeah, sure.
Silver, everybody has some, and it's very much an afterthought for a lot of operators. That's not to say there aren't primary companies that produce silver as a primary product, and there are quite a number of them. Peter, of course, knows quite a few. We're happy to do transactions there as well, as long as they're beneficial to the shareholder of that project. And generally what we see is, as a royalty company, because of higher margins and the ability for us to control our cost base, the ounces are worth a little bit more in our hands than they are in the operator. So there is a way for the operator to create extra value on those ounces, even if they are a primary product for them, by utilizing Silver Crown Royalties as a vehicle to unlock that value.
Excellent. So obviously, all the companies here want to grow. Silver Crown's not going to be any different, is my assumption, and hope. And certainly, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the different ways that Silver Crown can grow. There's things like acquisition, production, exploration. Maybe you can speak to those a little bit.
Absolutely. So in terms of acquisition, there are royalties out there that are silver dominant, but they do have some base metals maybe and some gold in them. So that's not a primary focus for them, even though depending on price, that would be an attractive thing for us to pursue. At the same time, we prefer structuring our own royalties, not necessarily because we can dictate that it's 100% silver based, no other metals in it, but also because we know exactly what goes into the contract. And we've seen royalties, existing royalties, that, to us, in our mind, were not written to a certain level of standard. And I'm not talking about enforceability. I'm talking about actual legal lien or being on title, things like this. So it's a lot better for us to create our own royalties. We know exactly what's in the paperwork. And I think we have pretty good legal representation that helps us structure that. So that's the path that we would prefer to go in terms of growth, as opposed to acquisitions, more focus on originating new royalties. Where can we find these royalties? Well, North and South America for us predominantly are the focus. Australia is a place that we're starting to look at as well. But we want to focus on production. We want to focus on cash flow, not only because it's de-risked about as much as one can get. We know what the production is. We know what the silver to gold or silver to copper ratios are. We know the payabilities. We know the contracts. So it's a lot easier to establish a royalty on something that already exists in terms of production history, as opposed to development or exploration. Further, it's putting a royalty on something that's in production today that adds to our top line right away. And we should be in a free cash flow positive position as early as this quarter, maybe Q2, which means that every single royalty that we bolt on from this point forth goes straight to the free cash flow bottom line or operating cash flow bottom line. So that's the focus for us right now, is to grow that cash flow through adding ounces in relatively safe jurisdictions, North and South America, perhaps Australia, structuring our own royalties.
So maybe we can cap this off with last thoughts. You've had tremendous quarter. I think the market has sort of really come to realize what the potential is at Silver Crown, and what they probably missed earlier. And so that's been great. That's really been reflected in your share price to, I think, a fair extent. Tell us a little bit about what lies ahead this year for Silver Crown.
Well, this is not official, but personally, I would like to see the company double silver ounces in terms of revenues every year. So last year we did 22,000 ounces or so. This year we should do somewhere in the neighborhood of 60,000 ounces with an exit rate of about 70. So next year I'd like to see that number be 150. So utilizing our balance sheet, which right now has about $6 million on it, in the money warrants, which are starting to come in as well, we should be in a position to grow at that rate going forward in not just this year, but into next year as well. So for this year specifically, free cash flow in second quarter, might be contemplating a dividend payment in the second half of this year. That would be paid out of free cash flow, of course, and then bolting on additional assets, additional royalties in the silver space.
Well, thanks so much for this overview of Silver Crown, Peter. It's been a pleasure chatting about it, and I invite people to look more closely at Silver Crown. An excellent business model, and sounds like some fantastic growth ahead.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for this
Pleasure.
opportunity.